Okay. Thank you, Dejanay. So before we get into the workshop and everything, I'm going to drop a quick link for all our new members to join the campus groups in 1 second. And then I just wanted to quickly review some of the different membership statuses that we have within MAPS, just because I know there was a bit of confusion talking with some potential new members. And so there's 3 levels of, I guess, status or like membership within MAPS. So there's general, and for that, there's no attendance expectations. You don't have to attend a single event. And you can be in our group me, a member on our website, on campus groups, and like there's essentially no requirement, nothing that you have to do, and you can attend any of the events. You'll have access to the biweekly like opportunities newsletter. Right above that is silver, which is if you attend more than 20% of events per academic year, which is really not that many. And for that, you can vote in elections in the spring, as well as get access to like some of our merch that we might have coming out and MCAT prep discounts in addition to the biweekly newsletter. And then the like top tier of membership is gold. And so that's attending more than 30% of events in the academic year. And for that, you get high priority for sponsorship to AMEC and RMEC, which are conferences. This year, AMEC is supposed to be in person in Orlando. So that's like a trip to Orlando, which sounds quite nice. In addition, you can also like vote in e-board elections, run for e-board, access to the merch and MCAT prep discounts from silver, access to the biweekly opportunities newsletter, and attend all the events. And so like for some of the events like CPR with Hero and those kinds of things, obviously like the more you attend, the more you'll be prioritized in getting those funds covered for your CPR certification. Yeah, so with that, I think that's good on me. Armand, do you want to go ahead and introduce today's event?
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for our first GBM of the spring semester. Today we're joined with Clifton. I'll let him introduce himself, but he's a representative from the Life Design Lab. And today we will be having a workshop about professional development. Over to you, Clifton.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am super excited to be with you all today. I have an interesting take on professionalism, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to also introduce another colleague of mine, Kyra Wilson, who joined us not too long ago, who is also a life design educator. And so, Kyra, can you give a little intro? And then Kyra's going to join in a little later on one of our other parts of our activity, but I'll explain it a little later too.
Thanks, Clifton. I'm Kyra. I've been here 4 months, and I just had an opportunity to meet Fevin at the Student Activities Fair. I'm thinking about what it's called. Very cool. And I wanted to get a sense of what folks in MAPS were working on. And having come from my last institution, I worked with our MAPS group there as well, doing some really cool stuff out in Iowa. But I'm coming here today from Baltimore. I'm excited to be with y'all. And I'm here in the Life Design Lab typically supporting biology and biomolecular majors, as well as folks looking at like gap year stuff. So if that ends up being some of your questions, let me know. I'm happy to support, and I'm happy to be here with Clifton in this workshop.
Awesome sauce. So, like I said, my name is Clifton Shambry. I use he, him, his pronouns. I serve as an assistant director of life design for diversity and inclusion, where my goal is really to work with many of our underrepresented groups and students to really think about who we are, who you are as assets in your life journey, right? Oftentimes we look at it in the deficit model of like maybe me growing up as a limited income person, right? That I'm limited income, or I was poor, or I was actually homeless, right? Rather than thinking about it from an asset-based approach of, you know what, me being homeless, poor, or limited income, I learned how to do more with less or do more with nothing, right? And so my goal is to really think about how we help you think about that for yourself, because everyone has a different explanation for themselves, right? And so in that, I also take that approach when thinking about professionalism, right? And so a little bit about my journey. I like I said, I use he, him, his pronouns. I journeyed to Hopkins in a unique way, I would say. So I went to undergrad in New Jersey. So I'm a Jersey boy at heart, all thick and through, where I grew up in a church a lot, where I went to church probably 7 days a week sometimes. But then I continued on my journey and thinking about what that meant for me. And so as I got into college, a lot of thoughts shifted about who I was, what that meant for me. So going to therapy, working through anxiety, depression, thinking more about what it meant to be queer and working on my own queerness, really taking the saliency of being a first generation limited income college graduate and really thinking about what that meant for me. And even thinking about cis maleness, what does that mean and how do I use my privileges for good, right, in some capacity, right? So that's a little synopsis of me. And kind of, I bring that into fruition first because I think it's important to understand each other as individuals as we connect and do this work together. It also gives a little context of where I'm coming from. And so my own journey in my life is continual. It's never ending. And I will continue to grow and think more about who I am. Now, when I think about professionalism, right? 5 years ago, I would have never shown up in a sweatshirt to a presentation. Ever. I would have been like, nah, I gotta look good. You know, it's not even the fact that I want to look professional. I want to look good and fresh. You know what I mean? I like to show up in my bow ties. I saw so for those iPhone users, there is, maybe it's on Android too. I don't know. I'm trying to be good at not bashing different types of phone users. Pray for me, it's still a work in progress. But it provided me, like, it went back to 2016. I was like, wow, Clifton with short hair, no beard at all. And I oftentimes was wearing a bow tie regularly. So it's like, that's how I would have normally showed up. But also, it doesn't have to be that way, right? Why did I just think that I had to show up in dress clothes, right? With a tie around my neck to make sure that I showed up in my best way, whatever that meant for me, right? But I can also show up and present information and still look presentable and however I feel like that's presentable, right? Me having a ponytail in my hair. Child, what was a ponytail? I had short hair and that was it. So especially being a man and the differences between how men and women should show up or how masculine or not masculine hair might look, right? Or right? So all of those different perspectives. So that's kind of where I am now, right? Where I'm like, you know what? I'll show up how I want to. But then also, one of my favorite quotes is by Maya Angelou, where she says, my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. So I say that to say I still like to show up fly. It's just I choose when I feel like doing it. Today, it was nice outside and I wanted to be comfortable, so I wore sweatpants and a sweatshirt. But it's still cute. And so I say that it's up to how you want to define it and how you want to show up and how you examine and experience it in your own spaces, right? So that's kind of how I wanted to do a little brief intro. What I'm going to do is I want to learn more from you all. And it's going to be, I also want to have kind of a discussion. And then I have a presentation that I'm not going to present all of it, and it's purposeful. I'm going to present it quickly so that you have resources to guide you in decision making as you think about your professional journey and what you decide to do. Now, I'll also give a caveat. I do not work in the medical industry. I'm giving perspectives, generally speaking, right? But then also my primary focus is thinking about who you are as people and how you use that to your advantage to succeed. So I wanted to provide that caveat. Yet, there are other people who you can connect with in industry. So like mentors, alumni, who can give you a little guidance on what that might look like. I tried to look up some articles, but then there are a lot of articles that there's some dissonance in the research of what you should do, when you should do it, how you should do it in medicine. So I was like, you know what? That's a different conversation. And so I wanted to focus on how we can think about what the perspectives might be, but then also how you can show up yourself. All right, how does that sound? Okay, cool. So I wanted to first start us off and see what your thoughts are. I like this because I don't know if many people have done this, but has anyone Googled themselves? lately in the incognito window. Don't Google yourself in whatever browser because whatever you go to regularly is going to populate. All right, tell me what you found when you Googled yourself.
I Googled myself and I had my roommate Google me and my LinkedIn profile popped up.
Okay, let me see you. I like it. Okay, that's awesome. Do you like that? I should ask. Do you like that LinkedIn's first or no?
No, I didn't want myself to pop up. I was kind of hoping not to see myself.
Why?
I don't know. I don't like to have a digital footprint.
Ah, I see. Okay. But why don't you want the digital footprint? I'm not gonna pickle you. Anybody else could come join in too, but I'm just curious.
I just want to be like incognito.
Right. I had a faculty person that was incognito and I couldn't find anything on there. I was like, how did they do that? But there are resources out there. So find some CS people that you know that can help you think about that if that's your interest long term.
Yeah, she's CS major. My roommate's a CS.
Okay, so you got somebody. So you need to figure that out. Or not. I'll give you a reason why not. Others?
Articles that like involve your name or like research stuff. I mean, for me, like I have a somewhat common name. So like when I search up, it's like a doctor who's a gastroenterologist from Hampton or something like that. But like, yeah, other stuff too.
Okay. I need a new gastro doc, but that's TMI. So maybe it's not for the space, actually. Look at that. I'm in the right space. Others?
Yeah, I would agree. It was like my LinkedIn profile, a couple articles that I mentioned in, and like Twitter posts that I'm tagged in as well.
Okay. Cool. Thank y'all for sharing. So, Kaya or Kia? Which one is it?
Kaya.
Kaya, okay. So I'm wondering, you talked about the digital footprint. I'm wondering, do you all like having a digital footprint? This is not just for you, Kaya. Why do you think a digital footprint would be important in your professional journey?
Well, obviously you wouldn't want to be related to anything negative.
Mhm.
So a LinkedIn profile is nothing bad, but I just don't want to pop up when I'm searched online. That's just
Gotcha.
me.
Yeah, I hear that. Others?
I think it's fine when you can control it. If it's like something that you can't control or like that can be skewed negatively, then that can lead people the wrong way or give them the wrong impression of yourself. But if you can control certain things like a LinkedIn profile, then that's fine.
Yeah. Go ahead, Armand.
I think for me, similar to what Kai was saying, I know I've heard, when you're applying for a job or applying for graduate school, I've heard, I don't know how true this is, but people will look you up and see what you've kind of done. And if they go on some Google search and they see, oh, you've committed some kind of crime, which probably isn't you, it's kind of bad, right?
It's the assumptions that people can make based off the information that you have online, right? Or especially nowadays, the lack of information they can find, right? So that could go either way, that you are not engaged depending on your interests, right? So if you are interested in doing research and you are not populating in any research articles, they're going to question that, right? Are you actually engaged as you say you are, right? And so not to say it's going to happen all the time, but like Armand said, people will research you, right? So when you're searching for a job or an internship, people will look up. I think the statistic was, it was definitely above 50%. I should have looked this up again. I have it somewhere in a document here, but I forget what it is offhand. But it's a high number of percentage of people who actually look it up. And that's uncomfortable because it's like, you should just talk to me first. And you should Google me after the final round, right? But you don't have control over what they do. You have control over what you put out there. My old director, Calvin Smith, I used to work in Lead. So I don't know if any of y'all know Lead and Calvin Smith. He said, if you don't create your story, others will tell it for you. I don't have time for somebody else trying to tell my story. Let me tell my own story, right? Because what they will tell is not what you would want them to tell sometimes. And so that's why I really love starting with this, because your professional image is not only what you present when you're physically with people, but it's also what is online and what others can tell about you without you actually being there and showing up. This could also mean I call them life documents. We used to call them career documents. So your resume and your cover letter, right? That's another way where people see who you are based on the information you're providing. Yes, Calvin is good for electric hire. So I wanted to start with that too, because I think one of my perspectives, I always know that you all have information. We all have thoughts about things. It's about coming together to talk about the curiosities, so then we can take steps to really trying new things out, right? And so if you had a fear of LinkedIn, right? There's a lot of good things that you can do with LinkedIn. I got a paid gig from LinkedIn. And so that was pretty awesome. And it's just an amazing opportunity. You can also see how much, learn more information about things online, right? And then your engagement alone shows people that you care about a certain topic, right? And so I really highly recommend at least LinkedIn. You all, if you are interested in being academics in the medical field or just connecting with faculty, Twitter is a great place. There's a whole academic sphere in Twitterland. And so I definitely recommend that. And I would say if you have a profile that you don't want to change over to being professional, definitely create something new and make sure that your non-professional profile is private. I had a situation where a student mentioned that they said something on Twitter. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Look at you. And it was like, that's not me. And I was like, but your profile said, oh, okay, cool, cute. And it wasn't private, right? And so that is another recommendation I have. So get off my soapbox and continue the conversation. I think this is just important because people will seek you out in those kind of ways, right? And so you don't have control over that. What you have control over is what image you put out there. And so with that, I provided some context of things, but I want to jump into thinking about who you are as people, right? I'll jump back to who we are as people in our experiences, right? We all have a lot of things that we bring to the table. We all have things that we've learned over time. And you're here now at Johns Hopkins, where you are continuing to think about learning and doing the learning and acting upon some experiences. So I really want you to think about that, right? As we are processing professionalism. And I like to say professionalism with identity in mind, right? And so when I say professionalism, though, what do you think of when I say professionalism?
Like if I were to take a stab at it, like probably the way that you present yourself in a work environments and like the way that you want to make yourself come across to others who you want to like form networking or like some kind of like professional connection.
Yeah, I like it. The way you come across, the connections, how you present yourself, suit and tie, maintaining a standard. Loving it. Other things?
I was just gonna say like physical appearance in the workplace. I feel like that's like a big part of professionalism.
Physical appearance. This is why I got clippers, so I can clean myself up sometimes when I feel like I'm looking rough.
I think sometimes etiquette has to play into it as well.
What do you mean by that?
Like how you carry yourself out in certain settings.
Okay. Thank you. I want to dig deeper. And so there is a thing called the Cycle of Socialization. Has anyone heard of this? Okay. So the Cycle of Socialization is, so backtrack, we're all born in a world without any particular perspectives about anything because we just got here. Our eyes not even open sometimes. And so we're here with fresh everything. Then we are going about life and we're taught certain things about certain things. We learn things from our parents or our families who are raising us. And then we're bombarded with additional messages about what to believe, what not to believe, how to go about life, etc., what values to have, what morals to have. Then we have media, which reinforces these messages that we have received or provide a little dissonance around the messages that we receive, right? To be able to help us think, oh, yeah, I see, that's right. Or, you know what, that's why that's wrong, right? And then we have a choice as people to continue with those messages and implement and reinforce those messages ourselves, or break the cycle to really think, you know what, with my knowledge, I don't think that that's what I want to do, right? That is the cycle of socialization. And so I wanted to bring that to fruition right now because when we think about professionalism, oftentimes we might be internally thinking about messages that have been taught to us that we may or may not want to continue to believe, right? And so the idea of showing up with suit and tie, or the idea of specific way of engaging, what do you all think about that? Where does it come from? Do you need a rephrasing of the question? Where does our perspectives that we should engage in a certain way? There you go. Where do our ideas of professionalism stem? This is why you got to have good people in your life.
I would say like the broad answer is social norms, like what we've like grown up to. Well, you have this certain like vision of like what you perceive to be, and so like you like whatever you see other people doing is what you try to emulate within yourself. So yeah.
Thank you. So the norms, and you like, oh, that makes sense. You didn't say this, but what I felt is that it's comfortable to go with the norms too. Is that what you were alluding to, or not really?
In most cases, yeah.
Mhm.
Some cases not. So.
Give me one that's not. Or someone else can, you don't have to, but okay. Yeah.
I'll give one and someone else wants to join, but like for Black people, how their hair should be in the workplace, or like how they should be like physical appearance wise.
Yeah. Any other?
I think I can give another example. So I know for men with facial hair, like it has to be trimmed and kept well groomed, all like most of the time, and not look, I guess, overgrown.
Right. Yeah, I get told that a couple times, like, is this your face? But I don't say that. I just say it in my head and keep on moving. But when it comes from family, though, I'm like, oh, okay. Family who understand when I look more clean. Like when it gets a little rough, I'm like, okay, whatever, you right or whatever. So it's the balance, right? What I was saying too, where it's like, sometimes yeah, sometimes no. I like that, yeah.
I think another common one is like tattoos, especially like in the healthcare field. Like people with tattoos are often like seen as like, I don't know, how like somehow like what's on your body or like your physical appearance correlates with like how well of a professional you are and like how well you can do your job.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. I had a supervisor at Hopkins. She had a tattoo on the back of her neck, and it was purposeful, and on her wrist. And she purposely talked about it so that people can feel more comfortable with their tattoos, right? So that activist piece or advocacy piece there, right? To make a change in that perspective. Granted, it was in education, and education is oftentimes more liberal, yet it is also a way to live one's life. So we also see in the chat, parents, old standard of social classes. Yes, that's a big one. It was like a reaction, but also what you put in the chat. I wonder, with these particular perspectives, whether or not we think we should follow them, who created those ideals? because our parents weren't here all our years, all the years of the earth, right?
I mean, it depends on like which ideal, but the people who established like whatever like foundation or like, you know, things you're going into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that's it, right? And so if we look at, so I'm not going to say all of what I think, but because I'm not a part of SNMA maps, but you know, in industries, and largely speaking, we see that most of the leaders of corporations or companies or hospitals look like what?
Old white men.
Exactly, right. And I'm glad you said that, because we have to be okay with communicating and talking about the experiences that we have, right? And those who are more privileged, old white men, those who have money, right, have created systems that are currently in place, right? We can go down the line of different identities that people have more privilege who have created systems in place, right? Christianity, right? They have created systems that we are to abide by. And if we do not, there are consequences that may be able to happen because we're not following suit with what has been established, right? Now, with the cycle of socialization, and I think what I've seen and we see in research and we see in media now more and more ever, where that is shifting, right? And, you know, some things like the Crown Act, right? Where they are focused on people show up as they best see fit, right? And you shouldn't control how someone wears their hair, right? And so that's a really great opportunity that the world is shifting, where I can say that America is shifting because I can't really talk globally, but I foresee it to be shifting globally as well. But it's not happening everywhere and everything, right? And so that's just one minute example of how we're shifting in our dynamics of what that means. Or folks are not staying in companies where they're not valued, right? That's another area where it's being shifted, right? Where now folks can say, you know what, if I don't see my value here, I'm going to transition to a new opportunity, rather than a reverse where oftentimes people are having conversations about transitioning to new opportunities are oftentimes the leaders in place, right? So I wanted to bring that up, right? That there's different expectations of what people should how they should abide by based on systems that are in place that were not created for underrepresented people, right? No matter what, if it's a gender aspect that you have for our women or trans folk, they were not considered in the systems that are in place right now with professionalism or any other systems that may exist, right? And that's something to keep in mind as you think about how you decide to show up and as your authentic self, right? Because we all are individuals, right? We have our individual stories and we have our individual experiences. And I like to say our own individual hair, because we do. You know, my hair is I don't have much lighting, but my hair is looking fresh today. It's day 4 of the ponytail. I got the little natural gels up. It's like holding it back. It's feeling good today. I need to get a picture somewhere. But that's who we are, right? And we should be able to talk about what we value in our lives and the way that we're able to live in our true selves, right? And so with that, there are a lot of ways that we want to help you continue to think about that. I did an interview with someone in the field, and I'm gonna put this in the chat for you all. Let's get this link, where I talked a little bit about my perspective of professionalism, because I was actually pretty fed up at the moment because somebody wanted to tell me something and I didn't agree with them. And so my baby sister, she's not a baby, she's 27. She's always going to be my baby sis. But she actually had to edit out my anger, which I'm grateful for her because it was there. So relying on other people who can see with you and go with you and then support you through the process. But so take a look at your leisure. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit more about my perspective. And this is just an entry point to really start talking about what it means to be professional in your own experiences. And it's up to you to decide what that means for you, right? And so I wanted to share that as a resource. And I haven't shared this with anybody, that many people yet, but I did a talk at Bloomberg School of Public Health for their Career Academy, where I was talking about living one's authentic life. So you can have a little bit more about my story. Don't judge me. It's the first time I did something like this, so, but I'm gonna send it to y'all. So it's a little longer. It's an actual video, so you can take a look at it. And then I hope that we can connect on your journey as well to talk more about what that means for you. And so thank you. So I wanted to also give us a next step, right? And so I have a presentation where I'm going to share it with you all, but then I can share, I'm going to zoom through it really quickly, but then I want us to spend time reflecting on how you can think about your next step in your own professional journey, because that's what's really important. And you have Kyra and I here as a support system to think about that for you and with you. And we're trying to pave the way in our own unique ways so that you can have an easier journey when you're up in our ages. And so we want you to pave the way now though, right? Because everyone has their own story and you can pave your own individual way. And so I will share my slide deck very quickly. I'm not going to share all of it because it's a lot of information. But I wanted to share with a little bit so that you have some of the ideas of what we wanted to share with you. So I have it now. All right, we're going to do it this way. So like I said, I'm gonna zoom through this. I'm not actually going to open it all the way up so you can actually just see it at like a bigger view. So I talked a little bit more about my story and talked about professionalism, debunking it, right? Talking more about your story, thinking about your online presence, but then also making your online presence work for you. And so talked a little bit about changes and thinking about a variety of aspects of how our world is shifting. I have in here just what is expected, oftentimes depending on your needs. I did focus on one gender because that is my perspective, and I am challenging myself. I need to work with others to also think about what is perceived and needed and expected. But I did try to bring in some other aspects there as well. So you see a little bit there, but it just give you that caveat. And so I try my best to be an advocate and an ally, but it's also a work in progress. So if you have recommendations, please send them my way. I would love to edit this and or present this information with any of you all if you're interested in thinking about that as well. So if you're interested in presentation opportunities, let's do this together. But then also formal, right? And so formal where I wanted to provide the different perspectives and the different levels so you can kind of get that perspective, because some people never know. And again, I said it's the perspective of those who dress in masculine ways, and it's masculine based on society, which is why I had non-binary experiences in the changes perspective. So, and the business format, which I also am challenged still because oftentimes for those who identify as women, there's still a perspective that they should wear dresses, and when they wear suits, that they are not considered. The perspectives of men towards women, and sometimes women towards women, is shifted based on how women dress at a higher level than men against men. And so that's something to also keep in mind. And this is an area where I really recommend talking to people, other people who are in the industry and who might also be changing the status quo, right? That's something to think about. And then business casual. And this is flux too, because it depends on industry. So I wanted to share that. Talking about your story matters and what we talked about, and shifting your own dynamic and breaking the cycle and continuing the cycle. And it's your choice to make that decision. little mind map of Clifton. And so I bring this as an opportunity for you to think about how you can analyze who you are as a person, right now and in the future. And so you'll see some gray areas, and those are sometimes those are the areas that I continue to work on right now, and or have worked on in the past, right? And so the other areas are more visible and I talk more regularly about. And actually this was queerness is something that has been hard for me over time, and it's getting much better, where I even came out to my church, right? And so in an informal setting, but it was a comfortable setting for me to be able to express myself. So these are some things that I think could be cool if you want to think about yourself in those ways. Some quotes from community members. So John has a video. If you click this link, I'll send it to you also, you have it. And Marina Cooper is our assistant vice president for marketing communications, then talking more about yourself. And then what we talked about, Googling and your online presence, is at the end. And so also how to connect with me. And then Kyra and I can put our information in the chat as well. So, and with that, I'm gonna stop sharing. And I wanted to see if there are reactions before we move towards a reflection, because we want to make sure that you spend time thinking about what we talked about and taking the action step to moving forward. But are there any reactions or comments that anyone wants to share before I pass it to Kyra for our reflective points? That's a reaction. I love it. Thank you. All right. Cool. We're still here. So if you're still mulling over some things, that's fine too. But I'm going to pass it to Kyra. Thanks, Armand.
Thanks, folks. And Clifton, I just want to double check. Do you want to hit all these questions or just a few? He's like, make some magic. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of hear from folks and to see Clifton share a little bit about professionalism. I know that in some ways we share some of the similar kind of philosophies about how to navigate that, because it is really different depending on where you are and the kind of information that folks are sharing. And so when we are taking a pause here, kind of taking in this information, you know, one of the questions we're really looking at are what areas of your life and identity are really salient to you. And I think about this question when working with students who are looking for different jobs and looking for different communities and trying to figure out, does this particular organization or this particular town or city have the things I really need to really be my authentic self here, right? And how do we balance that work? And so my question for y'all is, you know, what areas of your life or identity are really salient to you? What are some of the things that you really want to make sure that you're taking with you into some of those professional spaces? Is there anything that sticks out? You're like, this is a thing that has to come with me.
Something that I would say has to come with me. I didn't really know this at first, but after talking to my mom, she really noticed this, is that I really like working with kids. And that's something that I didn't know. Like, I have 2 little sisters and I was like, I cannot do kids. Like, I have a 5-year-old sister and 2-year-old sister. But now, like, I do a lot of tutoring. I now, like, the research I'm participating in, like, I'm conducting is with kids. So, like, just seeing how often kids just coming back is just like, maybe I am supposed to work with kids and maybe this is like what God had aligned for me. So that's just something that I really think I would want to keep in like my professional settings. And that's something that I figure is like important for what I want to do professionally.
So keeping that in mind and keeping that forward thinking for what you're bringing forward, what other things in your life or identity are really salient, really solid there for you? What will you take forward? You can pop it in the chat too if you're not feeling like other things you might take forward.
I think for me, something that I'm probably always going to carry wherever I go in life is my African heritage. So for those of you who don't know, I'm actually an international student from Kenya, and I've lived there my whole life. And growing up in Kenya and coming to a place like the United States, there's like a large difference in how society is, or how infrastructure is, and how, the various different people that you find in both places. So I think having that African identity is something that's gonna be with me for until the end of my life, because it's something that I do cherish and want to keep with me.
Thank you. Other things that you really want to center in some of your work as you move forward? I have something in the chat that says my open-mindedness, opening up that space, leaving room for ambiguity, curiosity in that space. Any other things?
I guess making sure to like strike a balance between like my personal independence and then being able to work with others. Just like being able to like set a boundary between the two and like acknowledging both and when it's like appropriate for both.
Yeah. Other folks who want to give a shout out online? Seeing, taking culture forward.
I was gonna say that for me, I would say it would have to be like uplifting others, because I feel like I grew up with a lot of younger siblings, so like that was always like a big deal. I guess like leading by example, and like now being on like MAPS eBoard and just other organizations, I found that like helping others is something that I like want to do, and like being able to work with others to like achieve a common goal.
Yeah, I think one of the important things I carry with me, and I think maybe Clifton and I share a little bit of this as well, is that I come out of a Quaker faith tradition. And so it's important for me that everybody have space to have say in what's happening in decision making. And that follows through to my work as well when it comes to supervising and working with other folks. I might be a supervisor, but I really want folks to have the independence and the autonomy to be able to kind of balance their work and make those decisions. So how do I create spaces in my work environment that are reflective of that, right? I'm seeing some shout outs here, also carrying identity forward. In ethnic background, both my parents are Nigerian, and with that comes so much more culture. Don't want to forget that. An enjoyment of small things, taking delight in some of those little things that are happening can be a huge shift in what we're looking at. I'm going to pop us to just one more question. So thinking about how professionalism has been maybe defined in our space, and as we take a little time to think about where those definitions have come from and whose kind of story has been told to us about how that should be, from this moment, kind of like in this moment going forward, how might you define professionalism? Or what do you want to engage? What do you want your professionalism to look like? So what kind of practice or action might you take in the coming years, months and years that will help you define that? It's something that you can do to practice your professionalism, knowing what it has been and what you want it to be.
I'd say its professionalism was largely like shaped by like other people and social norms. So I'd want to change it so that it's shaped by like my personal views and what I value, and try to like not incorporate it into what they want, but like use it to your advantage and like make it your own form of professionalism that like aligns with both like whatever you want to do and like whoever you are now, I guess.
Yeah. Other ways you might take that forward or practice that.
I think professionalism usually has a sort of culture centered on that specific workplace. So I would like to kind of like to add in what I kind of came from into the culture, and not just like kind of stay assimilated, just also bringing my character to it. So I don't feel sort of, I would say, invisible. Just like, yeah.
Really making sure that you're seen and heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think Clifton shared something really important, is that we sometimes can bring some of that with us, but making sure that you're also tapping into the good people around you to reflect that back as well. So, you know, knowing that you're coming into a new cultural space, a new kind of professional space, also tapping into the folks that you're seeing that are able to reflect back some of that as well, and also able to adjust, right? Because culture can shift with one person, but oftentimes shifts with the movement of many people, right? I'm seeing in the chat here, I would want my professionalism to be based more on my personality and the way I carry myself, not just my physical appearance. I would want to be more of my natural self, natural hair, natural beauty, dressing how I want, etc. Yeah. And so finding those spaces and also creating your own style, right? There's a part of being able to bring your own style into spaces, both with what feels right and feels good for your body and your well-being. And also something that you can feel like, I feel great in this, or I feel really beautiful in this, and bringing that forward. Yes. Any other things, any other practices you might want to practice in bringing kind of your idea of professionalism forward? Okay. I will leave that there for us at this moment. I will say one of the things that I love to do, and I literally have one right here, is that when I start to think about what are those key things that I want to see in my workplace, or I want to see in kind of my community, in my space, I write it down on a big bullet on a big sheet of paper, and they literally sit right on the other side of my screen here. And so when I forget something, or when I'm thinking through that, I say, you know, my philosophy around community and building space, you know, number one is to learn to listen and listen to learn, right? And I bring myself back to that practice. And so if once you start kind of developing your definition of what professionalism is, make that something you can see, something that will remind you often, right? And come back to that practice. Clifton, I'll pass it over to you, but I see a couple of things popping up over in the chat. I like my professionalism to mean I'm comfortable in the space, I'm working and can present new ideas and creativity to coworkers. Awesome, I love that. Who don't approach change with judgment. And that was mentioned in the article. Awesome.
Yeah, I love all of this. And like I said, this is a part of your journey, and we are here to help you figure out how to define it yourself and define your journey and design your own journey for yourself. There's a lot of things I wanted to continue to chat about, but time is time. So we want to continue this conversation. So there are many ways you can connect with us on LinkedIn. We have office hours that you can connect with us, and definitely think about what that means moving forward for yourself. But also I will be working in person in the D&I suite. So right on at the Homewood Apartments. So if you haven't been there, it's right on 30th and Charles Street, and it's the first entrance away from the lab and away from the Homewood Apartments entrance. And so definitely on Thursdays and Fridays, I will be in the office starting like the last week of February. So you can drop by as well, or just message us, and we're willing to connect and just be here for you as a resource. And like we said, we want you to thrive, right? And so that's our main goal. And our goal is to figure out that with you so that you can thrive in the best ways you can be. And that's it. Any questions, reactions, comments before we go? I will be sending the presentation to Armand so you all can have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.